All right, everybody. I am here with John DeJoya, who is the technical advisor for Strathmore plus Uranium. And we're here to talk about uranium, talk about Wyoming as a jurisdiction for uranium mining, and a few other things that you might find very interesting that Strathmore is up to. John, welcome. Thank you very much for just giving up a little bit of your time to be here with us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
No problem.
It's nice to take a break and see new faces.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure it is. And so, John, I would like to start this off with the broad topic of mining for uranium in Wyoming, right? Because I hear this a lot, that Wyoming is a good jurisdiction for not just mining, but specifically uranium mining. And it kind of begs the question, why is it that Wyoming is always seen in that more positive light, with obviously within the US, right? We can talk about different jurisdictions outside of the US, but that there are too many unknowns when you talk about, places abroad. Within the US, when we talk about Wyoming and uranium mining, it's usually positive. Why is that? Could you tell us how Wyoming is different to other places, please?
Well, I'll start with the obvious. And the obvious is that uranium is in a lot of different places in Wyoming. It has been found nearly all over the state. Wyoming was the second biggest producer in the first uranium boom. And as you're probably all aware, all of it didn't get mined. There's still a lot of good mineralization left in the state of Wyoming. Now that's the easy part. You find it, you own it, and you develop it. The hard part is the permitting and the licensing. And Wyoming is a very environmentally and permitting friendly state. The people there like the development. They understand how the development happens. They have seen companies take care of problems that existed in the past, and they have seen the expertise that the people put forth. And the voters, the folks of Wyoming, are in tune with this. They want development. They know it's good for the state and good for the country and good for the world. So it's a friendly place. I have worked on the permitting of 3 mines in the state of Wyoming, and all 3 successfully opened. Now, that's pretty encouraging. I also spent 7 years working in another state with multi-millions of dollars spent, and all we got to was the environmental impact statement. And we finally decided that it was very tough, and the market was falling, and we got out at that point in time. It's just, to sum it up, a friendly, productive environment for mining uranium.
That's very good. Yeah, I hear that it's kind of at all levels, right? From the guy in the street who maybe has a grandfather who worked in one of those mines up to the politicians at the very top, right? Everybody knows of the natural endowment that Wyoming has, and therefore because it's a small state, they're quite practical about it. We have it, let's mine it.
Well, one of our neighbors up by Night Owl, one of the neighboring ranchers, I dealt with his grandfather. Now that's kind of a bad thing to say, but years ago, and we just recently were in contact with him about purchasing water for drilling. And he said, sure, not going to be a problem. Now that's the kind of attitude that makes you confident in your properties.
That's very good. Okay, so let's go and get to the news that you guys put out. It was January the 17th of 2023. You guys, and I'm going to read this straight off the PR so that nothing is missed, and I don't really give a false piece of news or expectation. So it says Strathmore Plus Uranium is pleased to announce that the company has initiated permitting aimed at advancing its 100% owned Night Owl uranium project in Wyoming, which you just mentioned. This level of permitting is important to advance the project with the goal of eventually becoming a producing operation. Strathmore has begun the solicitation process for agencies, subcontractors, and personnel to complete baseline studies for the Night Owl mine project. And then it goes into a list of the different baseline studies at the very least that you guys are going to go for. And it's a very long list with topsoil survey, flora and fauna, transportation survey, vegetation sampling, et cetera, et cetera. So when I first read this, I thought, my goodness, Dev wasn't joking when he said that he was going to start pretty much all the processes that you guys could in order to get to mining status. You were going to start it basically as soon as possible. And since it is possible to start the process now, then you guys went ahead and started it. And I was taken aback. And by the way, just because I have a marketing relationship with Strathmore Plus Uranium does not mean I get privileged information. So I was just as surprised as everybody else to read this. But you guys are starting something that for most companies, they would not do until they drilled out the project completely and then had a resource out, and then they would consider doing something like this. At least my experience with investing in junior miners has been like this. How come you guys are doing it different and just starting the permitting process right now? Is it because the expectation is that this is going to take a long time, that you guys don't want to wait for it? What's the hurry?
Well, it takes a long time. Let me just say that. However, you have to have the background data for your property. The last thing we want to do, and I've seen cartoons on this where you see a drill rig out there and there's a bunch of rocks around it, and the guy's on his cell phone talking to the boss. He says, I don't know what all these rocks are around us. He says, but it's really weird. And of course, the boss says, that is probably a TP ring and we're in a lot of trouble. So having said this little anecdote, we want to document our baseline data. The last thing anybody needs to do or wants to do is get in a bind with the environmentalists, the archaeologists, or the neighbors. You don't want to drive down the road and somebody said, well, you contaminated that road. So we will go in before we do anything and document baseline data. Now we're confident enough because of our geophysical survey that we did and the previous drilling down at Agate that we know that the resource is going to develop. But before we go out there and start digging any test pits, we'll do the cultural resources. We call it the birds, bugs, and bunnies, but that's the flora and the fauna. We will also do a radiometric survey of the surface. Now, somebody's going to say, well, gee, you're not mining anything. What different? Well, let me tell you, when you drill a hole, if there's ore there, or dig a test pit, now you have the possibility of moving radioactive material into a non-radioactive area. One of the last things you really want to do is be on the 6 o'clock news and explain these things to people. We have to get it done. It takes quite a while. And some of these things require a duration of involvement. In other words, we have to do the weather monitoring for a number of quarters before we get there. The water monitoring the same way. We have to have so many quarters of data before we do these disturbances.
So you need to start early anyway.
Yeah, we want to document. We want to be good neighbors. We want to be good technicians also. And, we have recently been in touch with a leading local university, without mentioning names yet, about assisting in some of the work for these projects. And I believe we'll probably have some news for you on that soon. It's good to have local authorities. We don't want to go to Washington, D.C. to get a cultural resources expert. We can get them just down the road. There's an outstanding university. And we intend to do that, use local talent whenever we can.
That's really good. I love it when mining companies show that they're doing the right thing, right? Because especially in my and actually younger generations, there's this whole I guess false sense that mining is just a bunch of very wealthy people with top hats that come into your town and just destroy everything and leave a big mess. And that's exactly the opposite of what you guys are doing. And it's about time that we see this kind of thing more and more, and it just becomes the norm. I think we need to educate people more about, what it takes to actually get to a mine. People, I think, just imagine that, in order for us to have these little things that we can't live without, we need mining and we need responsible mining, and that things need to actually go back to their natural state after we've extracted the minerals. That's very good.
And I'd like to point out the success that our predecessors, that one of them I used to work with, have had in the Shirley Basin area. They've done an outstanding reclamation job out there. They've developed a beautiful lake with huge trout in it. And now it's almost a tourist resource for certain people. And yet the people still want the development. We're a long ways from anybody out there. The nearest town is Medicine Bow, which is a little over 30 miles away. Casper is probably about an hour drive, but it's a beautiful area. The last thing we want to do at Strathmore or any of the operations is to ruin this area. And we don't want any questions about our ethics or our abilities. So we may have disturbed people and surprised them for sure that we're starting, but it's a long process. It's 5 to 6 years to get permits. Takes a while.
Yeah, it does. It surely does. And so let me ask you, you're a geologist, and within Strathmore, there are a few different projects, right? Different types of projects too. What is your favorite one? I know we talk about night owl a lot, but I know that geologists are very quirky and they have their little babies. So what do you see out there that you really like?
Well, within Strathmore, I do like night owl. It's got the potential. The ore or the material, the mineralization is right on the surface. We've got good neighbors. If it were a different permitting environment, we could walk up with a dump truck and start loading mineralization right now.
You're just in the wrong continent for that, right?
Pardon?
You're in the wrong continent for that. If you're in Kazakhstan, maybe you could start it very quickly.
This is fascinating. It's a different rock type. All the other projects I've worked at have been in sandstones, in basins where the sediments collected. Most of what I did in Wyoming was roll front deposits. This is completely different. This is an unconformity. We don't know all the ins and outs. That's why we're allying with another firm, another group to help us on some of the science. It's different than anything else I've worked on. I'm really excited about it. So it is my favorite of the bunch. However, I will say agate is a known. We have, I think it's up to 500 drill holes there that we have people going through and digitizing right now. And so we can reinterpret. We know it's there. Beaver Rim, geez, I used to have this property, 40 years ago, and we weren't allowed to go up there and drill it. We didn't have the money. The market was dying. The drilling was expensive, and we had a lot better places to put our money on rather than finding ore. We had 40 million pounds found, drilled out, 47,000 drill holes on our property, and we had an underground mine in ore just north of our property on Beaver Rim. Wow. I've already been down nearly 1,000 feet into an old underground mine. We put the shaft in. So I've seen that. I know what it's like. I know what to expect. I haven't seen night owl. You know, night owl is a result of having a campfire dinner with an old gentleman one night 50 years ago. I'm excited
We
about it. And
featured
I
that
think the
story
rest
here.
of the guys are too.
For sure. And it's really, really refreshing to see somebody as experienced as you are, John, and still excited about the hunt, right? Because that's what, discovery is all about. And so you know that there's something there. You don't know exactly what it looks like. You don't know how much there is of the good stuff. And yet, you're excited to go and drill that thing out. That's really great to hear.
And no papers written on the project.
That's
We
even
are the
better.
pioneers on this project. It's exciting, very exciting.
That's very good. Well, listen, John, thank you so much for illuminating a little bit more about the whole process here and what's happening with Strathmore Plus Uranium. We will keep in touch. And next time that you guys have a piece of news, I will definitely contact you so you guys can come on the show and tell us a little bit more of the progress. And it seems like you're making a lot of progress. So thank you very much. Congrats on fetching this. And I'll see you very soon.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. You take care.
No problem. Take care.